Well, today is officially one day before the Lions vs. Giants Week 1 preseason game begins, and we're going to be going over Lions Live Wire, my 53-man roster prediction 2.0, with practice squad, of course. So, here it is. Lions 53-man roster prediction 2.0 with practice squad. Credit to the websites for the images. Starting at quarterback. Now, by the way, the players that are underlined either will be on the PUP list to start the season most likely, or are on injured reserve, and they're just not crossed out because they were placed on IR. So they're on the team, but they can't play, if that makes sense. So there we go. Starting at quarterback, we got Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker, with Nate Sudfeld not making the cut. Now, this was very, very tough for me. And I hate to say that Nate Sudfeld is really tough to almost make the 53-man. I had to have Hendon making it. I'm not keeping 3 quarterbacks. There's no way. Obviously, Hooker wouldn't stay on the practice squad, so I had to keep him on the 53-man, and I'm not keeping 3 quarterbacks, like I said, on the 53-man. So Nate Sudfeld had to be the odd man out, but I do legitimately think if somehow Nate Sudfeld outperforms Hooker in preseason, we will keep 3 quarterbacks, and I'm not really liking that idea, but it is what it is if we do. But we need, and in my opinion, we do need to add a veteran quarterback. If Nate Sudfeld or Hendon Hooker do struggle in preseason, we do need to add a veteran quarterback. There will be guys that become available. You still have guys like Brian Hoyer, Blaine Gabbert, Ryan Tannehill available right now. I think Ryan Tannehill is a very potential option. But you also have other guys like Case Keenum, who's on the roster bubble right now. You got guys like Nick Mullins. They could become available and be a solid backup for us if you brought him in. So let's see how it plays out. Running back, I got 4 making the roster. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, and Sione Vaki. Jamar Jefferson, Zonovan Knight, and Jake Funk not making the cut. This is pretty obvious. I did have one change here. I did not have Craig Reynolds making the 53-man last time, and I realized that was not really smart because Sione Vaki is a rookie running back, transitioning from safety. Jahmyr Gibbs is a second-year running back, and David Montgomery's a power back, essentially. So, and I keep looking over here, by the way, because that's where my screen is. But Jamar Jefferson, he has evidently been playing very well the last couple of days of training camp. So if he does make a name for himself in preseason, I legitimately think he could be competing with Craig Reynolds for that last running back spot. Always been a big fan of Jamar. He's been unfortunate his past two years with injuries. Zonovan Knight, haven't heard much of him through training camp. He's gonna have to show a lot for me to make the roster. And Funk, nobody has making the team essentially. Receiver, I have 6 making the team. St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Khalif Raymond, Darius Fountain, Caden Davis, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Not making the roster, Antoine Green, Jalen Calhoun, Isaiah Williams, Tom Kennedy, Maurice Alexander, and Tre'Quan Smith. And by the way, all the players here are going off of what I think they would be projected. So St. Brown, wide receiver 1, Williams, wide receiver number 2, DPJ, wide receiver, he would be wide receiver 6 in this case scenario. So the bottom guy here, Tre'Quan Smith, he would be the least likely receiver to make the 53-man roster, in my opinion, for the Lions right now. He's done absolutely nothing through preseason. He's shown me nothing. Not heard him once, not seen him on the field once, don't know what's going on. I had him actually making the 53-man roster prediction, or had him making the 53-man in my first prediction. And now I think he's the least likely to make the team out of all the receivers. But yeah, I do have Darius Fountain above and Caden Davis above DPJ right now. I think if DPJ struggles and Caden Davis, Darius Fountain, and a guy like Antoine Green or Jalen Calhoun outperforms DPJ, then DPJ could be on his way out because the deal is a very cheap deal. I believe it's a 1-year, $1.2 or $2 million deal. It's extremely cheap. He's not going to cost anything. There's not going to be any cap hit for us if we release him. But Antoine Green, that's a shocker to a lot of people that I don't have him making the team. That's probably the biggest shocker so far. I just don't see him making the team. He hasn't shown me enough through training camp. He was doing very well the first couple of days of training camp. Heard nothing since. Darius Fountain evidently is playing with the ones. Caden Davis was also playing with the ones the other day. Both of them have been playing very well through camp. They, in my opinion, are going to be the Dylan Drummonds and Chase Cotas of last year. Antoine Green will be competing with DPJ, in my opinion, for the 6th string wide receiver, but I think Antoine Green could make the practice squad. DPJ wouldn't, unless he was absolutely terrible during preseason. So I say the one shocker here so far is Antoine Green, in my opinion, not making the 53-man. Moving on to tight end, we got the obvious Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, James Mitchell with Shane Zylstra, Parker Hess, and Sean McKeon not making the cut. Pretty obvious here. It's actually 50% of Lions fans, not 100% obvious, because 50% of Lions fans do actually have Shane Zylstra beating out James Mitchell. I just don't see it. James Mitchell was a dog in college before he got hurt. Shane Zylstra's coming off of a season-ending injury last year. Shane Zylstra's not a blocking tight end. He's just a receiving tight end. Mitchell is more of a blocking, and I like blocking tight ends more than receiving. And James Mitchell has a lot of potential. Former fifth-round pick by Brad Holmes. You know how much he loves his draft picks. So I don't see James Mitchell getting cut. He probably would be able to make the practice squad, but also would Shane Zylstra, and I just prefer James Mitchell. So it's really just personal preference, I think, with that. And Parker Hess and Sean McKeon. Dan Campbell did bring up Parker Hess in one of his press conferences, saying he has been doing very well, according to Dan Campbell, but he has to show a lot in preseason. And Sean McKeon could have a slight chance because he is from Michigan, but I would highly doubt it. Moving on to offensive linemen, I have 9 making the roster. Panay Sewell, Frank Ragnow, Decker, Glasgow, Zeitler, Giovanni Manu, Christian Mahogany, Colby Sorsdahl. By the way, Christian Mahogany, with expecting him to be removed off the PUP list at the beginning of the season. Dan Skipper, Natane Moody on IR, and Kingsley Ekukon, Kayode Owosika, Michael Neese, Ike Boker, Duke Clemens, Brian Hudson, and Jake Burton not making the cut. This is a shocker to me. I had 10 offensive linemen making the 53-man roster, my first prediction. My guy and Kingsley Ekukon, I don't have making it this time. I haven't heard enough from him for training camp. Hopefully he does very well through preseason to convince me again to make the team, and I still hope the guy does make the team. But just from how much guys we added since my last 53-man roster prediction and how training camp has happened, I couldn't have him making the team. He was on the roster bubble and unfortunately didn't make it. The 10 offensive linemen was a lot to carry anyway. 9 is still actually a decent amount as well. I did have Skipper making it. Could be a shocker to some people. Obviously, I would have probably Natane Moody making it as well, but he's on IR, out for the season. But I think there's a legitimate chance Michael Neese, Ike Boker, or Kayode Owosika can make the team as well with that other backup guard spot, because keep in mind, Sorsdahl is now a tackle again, what he played in college. Giovanni Manu is not switching to guard. He's staying a tackle. And Mahogany, if he starts the year on the PUP list, then one of these guys will make the team as well. So no really big shockers here. I mean, again, if you really like Kingsley Ekukon like me, then you probably do have him making the team. But I just had to do it because have him not making the team because of how this rest of the 53-man roster prediction played out. So the change from there is Kingsley Ekukon not making the team. Interior defensive linemen, I got Elaine McNeil, DJ Reader, Levi Onwuzurike, Makai Wingo, and Broderick Martin, with Kyle Pico, Chris Smith, Pat O'Connor, and David Bada not making the cut. No shockers here whatsoever. I heard Kyle Pico has been doing very well at the end of training camp here, but it's still a long shot for him to make the 53-man. If he does very well in preseason, then potentially maybe he could make the team. But I would say it's very unlikely. And the other guys, they just got signed. David Watt and Pat O'Connor just got signed a couple of weeks ago. Actually, O'Connor just got signed a couple of days ago, and Bada got signed a couple of weeks ago. And you know how I feel about Chris Smith. So no shockers there in my opinion. Moving on to the edge rusher defensive end position, I got Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, James Houston, Josh Paschal, Mitchell Aguadu, John Kaminsky on IR, and Matthew Betts, Isaac Unkwu, and Nate Lynn not making the cut. I don't have Matthew Betts making the team. I do not. I've lost so much faith in Matthew Betts. He has done absolutely nothing in training camp, evidently. Any of the rest of these guys actually really haven't done anything in training camp either. I heard Isaac Ugu did okay the last couple of days of training camp, but still didn't, make a huge name for himself. Nate Lynn, heard nothing about. Like, obviously, Kaminsky's on IR, out for most likely the season. Um, and Mitchell Aguado, didn't hear much about him, but I do think he has a little bit more potential than any of those other guys. So that's why I had him making it. But I almost had only 4 edge rushers making the 53-man roster. We legitimately, and I mean we legitimately, need to add another defensive end. I don't care who it is, and I don't even care how good the edge rushers do in preseason. Unless if a guy has like 3, 4, 5 sacks, then yes, maybe I'll lean off about getting an edge rusher potentially. But we need to add somebody right now. It's ridiculous. Just one guy. That's all I'm asking for. I don't care if that's Yannick Ngakoue. I don't care if that's Carl Lawson. Don't care if that's Matt Judon. I don't care who it is. I don't even care if it's Bruce Irvin again. I will take Bruce Irvin at this point. I know. Bruce Irvin would legitimately probably be our third best edge rusher if he signed with the Lions right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. But this is so bad. I memean, a lot of people probably have Matthew Betts making it, but I just don't. I've lost so much faith in him, unfortunately. And yeah, it's unfortunate. Moving on to linebacker, I have Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, Germ, and Malcolm Rodriguez making the team, with Malik Jefferson, Ben Neiman, and Deron Gilbert not making the cut. Pretty obvious here as well. Actually, I almost had Malik Jefferson making the team. He was my 54th guy, simply because of the fact that he's a good pressuring inside linebacker. So for that very reason, I almost had him making it, and I heard he did decent his last couple of days of training camp, and it's only a couple of days of training camp with us. I do like Ben Neiman a lot on special teams, but I think Malik Jefferson has a better shot to make it over Ben Neiman, and Deron Gilbert heard nothing through him through training camp. And he's also more kind of like a safety as well. He's about 50-50, split linebacker, split safety. So I don't like, he would have to show me a lot of camp or preseason. So no shockers there. Obviously would have liked to kept Malik Jefferson, but just didn't pan out. Moving on to corner, I got 8 making the team. I have 8 corners making the team. Biggest shocker so far, and probably the biggest shocker of this video. I have Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, Emmanuel Mosley. Actually, I made this list before he went on IR, so now I have a roster spot open. I just realized that while making this video, I forgot to update this. So, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, Emmanuel Mosley on IR, Ennis Rakestraw, Kendall Vildor, and Morris Norris and Stephen Gilmore make the team. So Emmanuel Mosley on IR and Khalil Dorsey not making the cut. So, actually, it's 7 corners now I have making the team. I just got to process this through my head while I make the rest of this video, who that 53rd guy is going to be, and I think I have a good feeling of who it's going to be, but this is very controversial. Morris Norris is the only UDFA I have making the team. Spoiler, he's the only UDFA I have making the team. I'm a big fan of the guy. Name aside again, loves his tape at Fresno State, and I just think he's been a very good player in general. Liked what he's done through training camp, and I think he has a legitimate chance to make this team. Just watch. The guy is going to be a dog someday. I'm calling it. He's going to be my hot take for this year to make the 53-man roster. Gilmore just had making it again. Kendall Vildor as well. A lot of people hate on the guy for the NFC title interception drop. I don't blame all that on him. Again, he was in a bad position. He's a former 5th-round pick. Essentially didn't play at all last season until he signed with us. Was immediately asked to be cornerback 2. Thought he did an okay job for where he was supposed to be at. Because legitimately, he is a 5th, 6th string corner, not a number 2 corner, especially when he had not played a game with us prior to that. So, Kendall Vildor, I mean, people need to cut him some slack, man. If he is your 5th and 6th string corner, that is solid. Now, in my opinion, the Lions do need to add another corner or defensive back after the Emmanuel Mosley injury, whether that's Justin Simmons, Ryan Neal, Tracy Walker again. I highly doubt that. Or a Dory Jackson, Gilly Locke, whoever it is, we need to add somebody in the secondary again. Unless if, again, these guys, like the roster bubble guys like Vildor, Norris, Gilmore, Dorsey, Joseph, if they can make a name for themselves in preseason, maybe I will not, talk about adding a guy in the secondary as much, but you never know. But shocker there, Morris Norris makes the team, and I absolutely love it. Moving on to safety, I have actually 4 making the team now. I have Brian Branch, Afatu Melifonwu, Kirby Joseph, and Brandon Joseph making the team, with C.J. Moore, Sheelan Garnes, and Lauren Strickland not making the cut. So Brandon Joseph is going to be my 53rd guy. That way I can have an extra guy in the secondary. He's actually on the unofficial depth chart listed as our fourth string safety. So, and I loved him coming out of the draft last year. I drafted him in a lot of my mock drafts. Didn't have any mock drafts up on the channel, but mock drafts I did for fun. I did have him making the team, or the Lions drafting him. He's actually projected to be a 5th or 6th round draft pick, so I think he has a legitimate chance to make the roster. I liked what he did in preseason last year. I actually didn't really show a lot in preseason. He did have that game-sealing interception, but that's about it. But he has played decent through training camp, and I do think he makes the team with Emmanuel Mosley getting placed on IR right now. I could see C.J. Moore making it. I don't. I think he could make the practice squad, obviously, with the year-long suspension. He's not going to get picked up by any team. There's no way, unless if he, again, is amazing on special teams and shows some good plays on the defense in preseason. But Lauren Strickland is another interesting one. He's been doing very well through training camp. He could sneak in as well to make the team. I just didn't love his college tape. That's mainly why, but I do think if he has a good preseason, he could make it. Sheelan Garnes heard absolutely nothing through preseason, so no obvious, no shockers there besides potentially Brandon Joseph making it. Moving on to special teams, got 3 making it: Jake Bates, Jack Fox, Scott Daly, with Michael Badger on IR, out for the season, and Hogan Hatton not making the cut. Actually, when I was making this, I had Hogan Hatton making it over Scott Daly, simply because of the fact that Hogan Hatton's kind of a linebacker as well. But Scott Daly's got the experience. He's been here for 3 years, and I think he'll continue that. As long as he recovers from his season-ending injury last year, okay. Now, moving on to our practice squad. I have Nate Sudfeld, Jamar Jefferson, Zonovan Knight, Antoine Green, Jalen Calhoun, Isaiah Williams, Shane Zostra, Connor Galvin, Ike Boker, Kingsley Ekukan, David Bada, International Pathways Program, so he does not count towards the practice squad. I thought this was very smart of me because we get to keep an extra guy on the practice squad, and that extra guy can be a defensive tackle. That way we don't have to keep 2 defensive tackles on the practice squad. So I thought that was smart by me. Matthew Betts, Isaac Unklu, Malik Jefferson, Khalil Dorsey. And that safety actually would be, or that corner would now be, I gotta actually rethink this. So that 16th guy would actually be, in my opinion, probably, ooh, that's tough. I'd probably have that last guy on the practice squad be, ooh, that's really tough. Again, I totally forgot about to update this before I made this video. But the 16th guy would probably be, it's either Ben Neiman or probably Kyle Pico. I would probably say Kyle Pico would be that guy. So, yeah, we got Khalil Dorsey, Kyle Pico, not Brandon Joseph, and C.J. Moore on the practice squad. Again, sorry about that. I totally forgot to update this before I made this video. Now, I think that's a very good practice squad. So you have 4 defensive ends or defensive linemen making the team: David Bada, Kyle Pico, Matt Betts, and Isaac Unklu, with Malik Jefferson also being an inside linebacker who can rush the passer. So I like that a lot. And I think this is a very solid practice squad. Obviously, there are some big guys on the practice or on the team that did not make the practice squad simply because of the fact I don't think they would pass through waivers. So all these guys that I placed on the practice squad, I believe they would pass through waivers as of right now before week 1 of the preseason. Now moving on to the notable roster cuts, I have Tom Kennedy, Traquan Smith, Parker Hess, Kayode Wosika, not Kyle Pico anymore. I do have making the practice squad now. Ben Neiman and Lauren Strickland is the big cuts. Actually, not as big a cuts this time as in my previous 53-man roster prediction due to injuries and due to training camp performance. I have Tom Kennedy as a notable roster cut because he's Tom Kennedy's Mr. Reliable. Traquan Smith because he did play decent in New Orleans. Parker Hess because Dan Campbell mentioned him and he did solid through training camp. Kayode Wosika because he's been our backup guard for the past couple of years. Ben Neiman because he's a good special teamer, and Lauren Strickland because he's done very well through training camp. So I think this is a very solid 53-man roster prediction. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. Preseason game 1 against the Giants is tomorrow. Now, I do not live in Detroit, obviously, so I believe so the preseason game is out of market. I'm trying to get NFL Plus so I can watch that game before the game ends. I can still watch the game after it ends on NFL Network, but I can't watch it while it's live unless if I have NFL Plus. So I'll most likely be getting NFL Plus here, so I can watch the game live and update you guys right after the game instead of the day after or really late that night. But yeah, leave your thoughts and comments down below. First preseason game is tomorrow. And football is back. That's all I got to say. Football is back, and I am so happy. You don't even understand. It's been a very short offseason, not even going to lie. July was a little bit long with those 2 or 3 weeks or whatever where like no NFL news was in the world, but football is back. It's back. Very short offseason this year. We're chasing for the Super Bowl, obviously, and it's going to be a very exciting preseason. I will be making a third 53-man roster prediction right after game 3, like immediately, because roster cuts do start happening like just like that immediately after the third preseason game. So I will either make a third 53-man roster prediction immediately after game 3 or after game 2 of the preseason. So look forward to that. One Pride Go Lions. Leave your thoughts and comments down below on the preseason game tomorrow and what you would change from this. And one Pride Go Lions. Let's get this W tomorrow. And hopefully Hooker specifically can show that he can be that quarterback too.